So this video is going to be titled Trading Your Comfort for Your Calling. Okay, trading your comfort for your calling. And so mainly in this video, I'm going to talk about spiritual warfare in the wilderness and give language for the reason behind it. Why, like a lot of us, we get into these seasons of our life where we're pursuing the call that God has on our life, and we get into seasons in general, we have no language. We don't understand what's going on, what's required of us. We acknowledge that God has given us a promise, and that's what's on the forefront of our mind. But when we get into a place of wilderness, this promise can seem so far away. We want to sometimes give up because we don't have an understanding of God's character or truly what's being required of us. And so, and a lot of times we find ourselves angry with the Lord during this phase because of the warfare being brutal. This is just things that the Lord has shown me that I just want to share with everyone who's watching this. Anytime you're working towards anything that's purposeful, especially for God's will for your life, God's kingdom, okay, that's when there comes warfare, right? That's when there's an attack. So when we're in the wilderness and we're going through prolonged battles of spiritual warfare, what does this have to do with the promise that God gave us? Well, here's one of the biggest things. A lot of you are struggling in identity, or you don't know your identity, right? We use titles all the time. We love titles. We love who, we believe that God has called us to be, but what does that really look like when we have to walk that out, right? Having a calling on your life isn't just saying, well, I'm pursuing my calling. It really does require you to sacrifice, okay? You've had to give up homes. You've had to give up relationships. You've had to give up family. You have to give up sleep. You have to give up so many things, idols, so many things that you may not even realize were idols, right? In your life, there's so many changes that are required in order for you to fulfill the call that God has on your life. The biggest thing you have to recognize is it has nothing to do with you. Okay. A lot of times we're like, oh, it's because I'm this, it's because I'm that. I feel like I'm such an angel. Why does it really has nothing to do with you? The attacks come because of the anointing that God has placed on you. And because of your pursuit of that anointing, right? You don't recognize how, even in your waking life, like I'm here on YouTube, but before I was on YouTube, what I was doing in real life, I didn't even realize me being in, the call of God for my life. I was serving his people without even it was just happening naturally, right? It's just what's on you, right? And so people would come, I've talked about this in previous videos, God would send people my way and I'm at work. I mean, it's inevitable, right? And it really had to do with whatever message God puts inside of you, whatever call he puts on you. And even in my waking life, right, before even being on YouTube, I still had to battle, right, because I was pursuing God's call for my life. And so when he ushers you into a wilderness and you're going through this prolonged season, right, where you don't know how long it's going to be, or maybe you do, I don't know. It really is contingent on how much work that you put in according to what God has called you to do to get to your promise. But when you're battling, you kind of look at this at a certain point, you may become very tired out. And you may say like, well, what is the purpose of all this, right? You're missing God's hand in this. You're missing something important, which is found within God's character, right? You have to acknowledge that anything that God is going to give you, he's going to first equip you for it. He wouldn't send you into a promise without you having the knowledge and the tools to protect that thing, to keep it, to cultivate it, to fight in it, right? Because you're going higher in God. You're going to a different level. You have to understand that there's going to be new enemies. You're going to have to understand how to fight, right? Why would he send you something that would overtake you because you have no tools, you have no equipment? You have to go through an entire transformation in your mind, right? This is a part of spiritual warfare as well, just healing, deliverance. This is unveiling the lies, the things that, have been going on through your bloodline, right? Breaking generational curses. And for those of you who don't believe in generational curses, this video may not be for you, because there are many people who may not be affected by generational curses, right? All of them, right? Some of them, but they're carriers, and this stuff can be passed on to their children, because if you're not taking authority over it, you may be passing it on because it's in your bloodline and it was never dealt with. Ask me how I know. Like this is what the Lord has had me dealing with. And so that's just another story for another time. Some people don't believe that, they have to break generational curses, but that's something you could just take back to the Lord. But what I'm saying is, right, it's important for us to have an understanding of what God is requiring us when it comes to warfare, because we a lot of times get focused on the people. We start focusing on if it's family, this certain family member, if it's an individual, we start looking at the people, but it's really not anything that we're wrestling with physically. It's spiritual. And so this is why you have to transform your mind, right? You learn how to walk in the spirit through this battle of spiritual warfare. You need to transition. Like, you need to get to a place where you're not seeing this world as, physical, right? You understand this is a spiritual world. Before you react, right, to whatever's going on around you, you acknowledge in the spirit what's coming against you. Like, you'll get to a heightened place where you walk into a room and you already know. Like, there's nothing you have to do. Somebody walks into your room and the atmosphere shifts, right? This is, in other words, you're battling to get to this authority that God has called you to walk in. You're battling to get into this position that God has called you to truly reign and rule in your land, wherever he's sending you, wherever promise he's giving you. Otherwise, like I said, if you don't know how to walk in the spirit, you don't know what's going on around you. You're going to be like back and forth, right? One minute you're really in for God and the next minute you're not, because you don't understand anything. And so a lot of times too, we don't recognize that we keep going around and around if we're not passing these tests. So the longer you stay angry at the Lord, the longer you stay angry at your situation, the longer you're going to stay in the wilderness. Okay. If you try to go backwards and say, okay, well, I'm just not feeling good, I need something to self-soothe. I'm going to go drink. I can have a little drink. And the Lord has basically told you, you need to stop drinking. And you keep going back and doing the same thing. You're going to be going around in circles in the wilderness until you put these idols away and you really, truly walk this thing out, believing that God is your deliverer. God is all that you need. You are fully dependent on the Lord for everything. Okay. Even in a battle of spiritual warfare. Because a lot of you don't know God as your vindicator. A lot of you have been fighting battles on your own and you've been losing, right? Before you gave your life over to the Lord, your enemies were defeating you. But when you get fully submitted to the Lord and you're pursuing your calling and you're putting on the full armor of God, right? You're walking according to the Spirit. You will see the Lord take care of your enemies. Okay. And so if you stick with God long enough, he will show you why the attacks have been so brutal. And I'm talking about your whole life. A lot of you have dealt with spiritual warfare since a child. Those who have really, truly have a calling on their life from the Lord. This is not, just something that just dropped or whatever. No, like some of you who have really just been like misunderstood your whole life. A lot of everything that you have gone through has to do with the anointing that's on your life. You just had no language for it because you didn't know your identity. When you know your identity, you understand that you don't take anything personal. When you know your identity, you know that there's some places you don't go into. You don't walk into these atmospheres because you understand spiritual things. You understand, I'm not opening that door. When people will look at you and be like, what are you talking about? You can just this, grace and, Jesus died for this. People who haven't made that transition, they haven't had that revelation that God has given you, they'll kind of be like, what are you talking about? You kind of sound like you're a little over spiritual. They might try to call you religious, but you're just at a different level, right? God is dealing with you differently. You've reached a certain height where you can't go back. Your eyes are open, you see. And so that's one of the things that you have to think about is, when you have identity, you'll be able to have context. You'll be able to have an understanding of what's going on in whatever season the Lord puts you in. But you have to be able to stick with God long enough and allow him to process you through these seasons of spiritual warfare so that you are not only understanding of what's going on, understanding of God's character and how he moves and how he handles things in his kingdom, and how that translates on earth, but also you understand you understand what your bounds are. You understand who God has called you to be. You understand what's required of you, and you understand how to move, in these battles so that you can protect your calling, so that you can continue. Okay. And so that is all that I have for this video. I hope this was helpful to whomever was watching this today. and I will see y'all in my next video.